The stagecoach wheels kicked up clouds of dust as they rolled into Cedar Ridge, Texas. Sarah Matthews pressed her face to the small window and watched the town come into view. Her heart beat fast with hope and fear mixed together. After 3 days of bumpy roads and sleepless nights, she was finally here. Sarah smoothed down her blue traveling dress and tried to fix her brown hair. The pins had come loose during the long ride. She wanted to look her best when she met Thomas Whitmore. They had been writing letters for 6 months. His last letter said he would be waiting at the general store to meet her. The stagecoach driver called out, "Cedar Ridge!" "End of the line, folks." Sarah picked up her small bag and stepped down from the coach. The hot Texas sun hit her face right away. She looked around at the dusty main street. There were wooden buildings on both sides. She saw a bank, a saloon, a hotel, and a large general store with Whitmore's painted on the front. A tall man in a black suit walked toward her. He had neat brown hair and clean hands. His clothes looked expensive. Sarah knew this must be Thomas. "Miss Matthews?" he asked. His voice was polite but cold. "Yes, that's me," Sarah said with a smile. She held out her hand to shake his. Thomas looked at her hand for a moment before taking it. His face showed surprise when he felt how rough her skin was. Sarah's hands were not soft like a lady's hands. They showed years of hard work on her family's farm back in Ohio. "Welcome to Cedar Ridge," Thomas said. He picked up her trunk from beside the stagecoach. "I hope your trip was not too difficult. It was long, but I'm just happy to be here," Sarah said. She walked beside him toward his store. "Your town looks very nice." Thomas nodded but didn't smile. "I've worked hard to make my business successful here. I believe in doing things the right way." They walked into the general store. Sarah looked around with interest. The shelves were full of goods, flour, sugar, tools, fabric, and many other things. But she noticed the prices were very high. "This is my store," Thomas said with pride. "I serve all the people in this area. Ranchers, farmers, townspeople, they all need what I sell." Sarah saw an old woman at the counter. She was counting coins slowly. The woman looked worried as she put the coins back in her purse. "I'm sorry, Mr. Whitmore," the woman said. "I don't have enough money for the flour today. Maybe next week." Thomas didn't look sorry at all. "Business is business, Mrs. Cooper. I can't give things away for free." Sarah felt uncomfortable watching this. Back home, her family store would sometimes let people pay later if they were having hard times. She wanted to say something, but she kept quiet. This was her first day here. After the old woman left, Thomas showed Sarah around the store. He talked about his profits and his plans to expand. Sarah listened, but she was thinking about Mrs. Cooper's sad face. "I have a room ready for you at the hotel," Thomas said. "We can talk more tomorrow about our future together." That evening, Sarah ate dinner alone in the hotel dining room. She thought about Thomas and tried to understand him better. His letters had been kind and warm, but in person he seemed different, cold, focused only on money. The next morning, Thomas came to walk with her around the town. Cedar Ridge was small but growing. There were maybe 200 people living there. Most of them worked on ranches or farms around the area. "I want to show you the house I'm building," Thomas said. They walked to the edge of town where a big white house was almost finished. "This will be our home after we marry." The house was beautiful. It had a wide front porch and large windows. Inside, the rooms were spacious and well-planned. Sarah could see that Thomas had good taste and plenty of money. "The parlor will be perfect for entertaining guests," Thomas said. "I want you to make it a place where the important people in town will want to visit." Sarah nodded, but something bothered her about his words. He talked about her like she was another piece of furniture for his house. Over the next few days, Sarah spent time with Thomas and tried to learn about her new life. She met some of the townspeople. Most were friendly, but she could tell they were watching her carefully. Everyone wanted to see what kind of woman Thomas Whitmore had chosen. Sarah helped in the store sometimes. She was good with numbers and quickly understood how the business worked. But she noticed things that worried her. Thomas charged very high prices, especially to the ranchers and poor farmers. When supplies were hard to get, he made the prices even higher. One afternoon, a young rancher came in looking for medicine for his sick child. The price Thomas asked was 3 times what the medicine cost back in Ohio. "Please, Mr. Whitmore." The rancher said, "My little girl is very sick. I'll pay you back as soon as I can." "Cash only," Thomas said firmly. "I'm not running a charity." Sarah watched the rancher's face fall. She knew what it felt like to worry about a sick child. Without thinking, she stepped forward. "Thomas," she said quietly, "maybe we could work something out. The man clearly needs help." Thomas turned to look at her. His eyes were cold and angry. "Sarah, please don't interfere with my business. You don't understand how things work here." The rancher looked embarrassed and left without the medicine. Sarah felt terrible. That night, she couldn't sleep thinking about the sick child. The next day, Sarah tried to talk to Thomas about his business practices. She suggested that helping people in need would make them loyal customers. She talked about ways to lower prices and still make good profits. Thomas listened with a frown on his face. "Sarah, I think you have the wrong idea about what I expect from a wife. I need someone who will support me, not question my decisions." "I am trying to support you," Sarah said. "I want to help make the business even better." "A lady doesn't involve herself in business matters," Thomas said sharply. "A lady takes care of the home and entertains guests. She doesn't argue about prices or worry about customers who can't pay." Sarah felt a chill run through her body. She was starting to understand what Thomas really wanted. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a decoration for his fine house. Someone who would look pretty and stay quiet. That evening, Thomas took her to dinner at the hotel. He talked about his plans for their wedding and their future, but he never asked what she wanted or how she felt about anything. "I've been thinking about your behavior in the store," Thomas said as they finished eating. "I need you to understand that a proper lady doesn't involve herself in business. Your job will be to make our home beautiful and peaceful." Sarah looked at him across the table. "What if I have ideas that could help? What if I see ways to make things better?" Thomas shook his head. "Sarah, I chose you because I thought you would be a proper wife. Your letter showed me a gentle, quiet woman, but you seem to want to fight about everything." The word "fight" hit Sarah like a slap. She wasn't trying to fight. She was trying to help. But Thomas saw her strength and independence as problems to be fixed. That night, Sarah lay in her hotel bed and stared at the ceiling. She thought about her journey to Texas and all her hopes for a new life. She had wanted to find love and partnership. Instead, she had found a man who wanted to change everything about her. Outside her window, she could hear the sounds of the town settling down for the night. Somewhere out there was the rancher's sick child. Somewhere was Mrs. Cooper counting her coins and worrying about food for her family. And here was Sarah, realizing that the man she had come to marry saw kindness as weakness and spirit as rebellion. She closed her eyes and wondered what tomorrow would bring. She had traveled so far and given up so much to be here. But already, she could feel that this might not be the new beginning she had dreamed of. Sarah woke up Thursday morning with a heavy feeling in her chest. She had been in Cedar Ridge for almost a week now, and things were not going as she had hoped. Every day, Thomas seemed more disappointed with her. Every day she felt more trapped. She dressed carefully in her best green dress and pinned her hair up neatly. Maybe today would be better. Maybe she and Thomas could find a way to understand each other. She walked to the general store to meet Thomas for breakfast. The morning air was already hot, and dust swirled in the street as wagons passed by. She could see farmers and ranchers heading into town for supplies. Thomas was behind the counter when she arrived. He looked up and nodded at her, but he didn't smile. His face had been cold toward her for days now. "Good morning, Thomas," Sarah said, trying to sound cheerful. "Sarah," he replied, "I need to finish some business first. Wait here." Sarah watched as customers came and went. She saw the same pattern every time. Thomas charged high prices, especially to people who looked like they couldn't afford much. When people tried to negotiate or ask for help, he turned them away. A family of homesteaders came in. The man and woman looked tired and worn down. Their clothes were patched and faded. 3 small children stayed close to their mother. "We need flour, beans, and some coffee," the man said. "We're starting our farm and money is tight right now," Thomas added up the prices. "That will be $12.50. The man's face went pale. "$12.50? Sir, that seems very high. In the last town, those same things cost $8. "This isn't the last town," Thomas said coldly. "These are my prices. If you don't like them, you can shop somewhere else." The woman touched her husband's arm. "Maybe we can just get the flour for now," she said quietly. Sarah watched the children. They looked hungry and thin. The youngest girl was maybe 4 years old. She reminded Sarah of her own little sister back home. Thomas quoted the price for just the flour. It was still too high. The family talked quietly among themselves, trying to decide what to do. Sarah couldn't stand it anymore. She stepped forward. "Thomas," she said, "these people are trying to build a farm. They'll be good customers for years if we help them now. Maybe we could lower the prices a little." Thomas's face turned red. "Sarah, step back. This is not your concern." But Sarah couldn't stop herself. She thought about all the unfair prices she had seen. She thought about Mrs. Cooper and the rancher with the sick child. She thought about her own family store where they treated customers like neighbors, not just sources of money. "It is my concern," she said, her voice getting stronger. "If I'm going to be your wife, then this business will be partly mine too. And I don't want to be part of something that hurts people who are already struggling." The store went quiet. The Homesteader family looked uncomfortable. Other customers stopped what they were doing to listen. Thomas grabbed Sarah's arm and pulled her toward the back of the store. "We need to talk," he said through clenched teeth. When they were alone, Thomas let go of her arm. His face was angrier than she had ever seen it. "How dare you embarrass me like that?" he said in a harsh whisper. "How dare you question my business in front of customers?" "I wasn't trying to embarrass you," Sarah said. "I was trying to help. Those people need— I don't care what they need." Thomas interrupted. "This is my store. These are my prices. I decide how to run my business, not you." Sarah felt her own anger rising. "But it's not right, Thomas. You're charging prices that hurt people. You could still make good money and be fair at the same time." Thomas stared at her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was cold and final. "I thought I was getting a lady. Sarah, I thought I was getting a woman who would support her husband and know her place. Instead, I got someone who wants to argue like a man and interfere where she doesn't belong." His words hit Sarah like a physical blow. "Know my place?" "Thomas, I thought my place was as your partner. I thought you wanted a wife, not a servant." "I wanted a wife who would grace my parlor and entertain my guests," Thomas said. "I wanted someone gentle and quiet who would make my home peaceful. Instead, you want to fight about everything. You want to tell me how to run my business. You act like some common farm woman instead of a proper lady." Sarah felt tears starting in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "I am who I am, Thomas. I care about people. I want to help when I see unfairness. That's not fighting, that's being human." Thomas shook his head. "It's not what I want in a wife. You misrepresented yourself in your letters, Sarah. You made me think you were different." The accusation stung. Sarah had been honest in her letters. She had told him about her family store, about helping on the farm, about her thoughts and opinions. Maybe Thomas had only read what he wanted to read. "I never lied to you," she said quietly. "Maybe not with words," Thomas replied. "But you let me believe you were a proper lady. You let me think you would be the kind of wife I need." They stood there looking at each other. Sarah could see that Thomas had already made up his mind about her. There was no changing it. "What are you saying?" she asked, though she already knew. Thomas reached into his pocket and pulled out a roll of money. "I'm saying this isn't going to work. I'm saying you need to go back where you came from." He held out the money to her. Sarah stared at it but didn't take it. "You're sending me away?" she asked. I'm giving you money for the trip home, Thomas said. The evening stage can take you to the next town. From there, you can get a train back to Ohio. Sarah felt like the world was spinning around her. A week ago, she had been so hopeful. She had given up everything to come here. She had sold her few belongings to pay for the trip. She had said goodbye to her family, not knowing when she would see them again. Now, Thomas was throwing her away like a broken tool. "Thomas, please," she said. "Maybe we can work this out. Maybe we can find a way to understand each other better." But Thomas was already shaking his head. "My mind is made up, Sarah. You're not the woman I thought you were. It's better to end this now before we make a bigger mistake." He pushed the money toward her again. This time Sarah took it. Her hands were shaking. "I'll have someone take your trunk to the hotel," Thomas said. "The stage leaves at 6 o'clock. Sarah looked at him one more time. She wanted to say something that would make him understand. She wanted to tell him that he was making a mistake, that he was choosing loneliness over love, appearances over substance, but she could see it wouldn't matter. Thomas had decided what kind of woman he wanted, and Sarah wasn't it. "I'm sorry you're disappointed," she said finally. "I'm sorry I'm not what you expected," Thomas didn't reply. He just turned and walked back toward the front of the store. Sarah stood alone in the back room for a moment, trying to understand what had just happened. Then she walked through the store and out onto the street. She could feel people staring at her. Word would spread quickly in a small town like this. She went back to the hotel and sat in the lobby. Her trunk was already there, waiting. The hotel clerk looked at her with pity and curiosity. Sarah sat in a chair by the window and watched the town go by outside. She saw the Homesteader family loading their wagon with just a few supplies, less than they needed. She saw Mrs. Cooper walking slowly past the store, probably still unable to afford the flour she needed. The afternoon stretched on slowly. Sarah felt numb and empty. She thought about going home to Ohio with her tail between her legs. She thought about facing her family and friends, admitting that her great adventure had failed. She thought about Thomas, too. Part of her was angry at him for being so unfair and closed-minded, but another part of her felt sad for him. He was going to spend his life alone in his perfect house, surrounded by his perfect things, never letting anyone get too close. As evening approached, Sarah could hear the stagecoach coming into town. Soon she would be on it, leaving Cedar Ridge forever. She picked up her small bag and prepared to go, but as she stood up, she felt a strange reluctance. Yes, Thomas had rejected her. Yes, her dreams of marriage and a new life had been crushed. But something about leaving felt wrong, too. She thought about the people she had met. The struggling farmers, the worried mothers, the hard-working ranchers. They needed someone who would stand up for them. They needed someone who cared more about people than profits. Maybe Cedar Ridge wasn't done with her yet. Maybe she wasn't done with Cedar Ridge either. Sarah sat back down and waited to see what would happen next. Sarah sat in the hotel lobby as the sun began to set over. Cedar Ridge? Her trunk sat beside her chair like a faithful dog waiting for its master. The evening stagecoach would arrive soon, and she would be on it, heading back to Ohio with her dreams in pieces. The lobby was quiet except for the tick of the big clock on the wall. Sarah stared out the window at the main street. She could see people finishing their daily business, heading home to their families for supper. She felt more alone than she had ever felt in her life. The hotel clerk, a kind woman named Mrs. Patterson, brought her a cup of coffee. "You don't have to leave, you know," she said quietly. "There might be other options." Sarah looked up at her with tired eyes. "What options? Mr. Whitmore has made his feelings very clear." "I don't belong here." Mrs. Patterson sat down in the chair next to her. "Thomas Whitmore isn't the only man in this town. And marriage isn't the only reason a woman might stay in a place." Before Sarah could ask what she meant, the front door of the hotel opened. A tall man walked in, removing his worn cowboy hat as he entered. Sarah had seen him around town, but had never spoken to him. He was older than Thomas, maybe in his early 60s. His hair was mostly gray, with some black still showing through. His face was weathered and lined from years in the sun, but his gray eyes were kind. His clothes were clean but well worn, the clothes of a working man. "Excuse me, miss," he said, approaching Sarah's chair. His voice was deep and rough but gentle. "Are you Miss Matthews?" "Yes," Sarah replied, wondering who this man was and what he wanted. "My name is Jacob Harrison." "Most folks call me Jake?" He held his hat in both hands. "I own a ranch about 5 miles outside town. I heard about your situation with Thomas." Sarah felt her face grow hot with embarrassment. Of course everyone in town would know by now. "I see news travels fast here." Jake nodded. "Small towns are like that. But I didn't come here to gossip, Miss Matthews. I came to offer you something different." Sarah looked at him with confusion. "I don't understand." Jake glanced around the lobby, then pulled up another chair so he could sit facing her. "Miss Matthews, I've been watching what's been happening. This week, I've seen how you tried to help people in Thomas's store. I've seen how you care about fairness and kindness." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I lost my wife, Martha, 3 years ago to a fever. Since then, it's been just me and my daughter, Emma. She's 16 now, and she needs guidance from a woman. The kind of guidance I can't give her." Sarah listened, not sure where this conversation was heading. "My ranch is struggling," Jake continued. "The drought has been hard on us. I need help with the books, with planning, with all the things Martha used to handle. I need someone with a good head for business and a caring heart." He looked directly into Sarah's eyes. "I'm not asking you to marry me, Miss Matthews. I'm asking if you'd consider working for me. As a housekeeper and companion to Emma, I can pay you a fair wage and you'd have your own room in the house." Sarah stared at him. This was the last thing she had expected. "Mr. Harrison, I appreciate the offer, but I don't know anything about ranching." "You don't need to know about cattle," Jake said with a slight smile. "You need to know about people and numbers and making things work better. From what I've seen, you know plenty about those things." Mrs. Patterson, who had been listening quietly, nodded encouragingly. "Jake Harrison is one of the most respected men in this county, dear. If he's offering you work, it's a good opportunity." Sarah thought about it. She could go back to Ohio, back to living with her brother's family, back to being the spinster aunt who never found a husband. Or she could stay here and try to build something different. "What would people think?" she asked. "A single woman living on a ranch with a widowed man?" "People will think what they always think," Jake said. "Some will approve, some won't. But you'll have honest work and a place to belong, and Emma needs you, whether she knows it yet or not." As if summoned by his words, the hotel door opened. Again, a young woman entered, looking around until she spotted Jake. She was tall and slim, with long dark hair braided down her back. Her dress was simple and practical, and she moved with the confidence of someone used to hard work. "Pa, there you are," she said, walking over to them. "I've been looking all over town for you." "Emma, I want you to meet Miss Matthews," Jake said, standing up. "Miss Matthews, this is my daughter Emma." Emma looked at Sarah with curious eyes. She had her father's gray eyes and strong jaw. "You're the lady who was going to marry Mr. Whitmore," she said. It wasn't a question. "I was," Sarah replied, not sure what else to say. Emma studied her for a moment. "I heard you stood up to him about his prices. Is that true?" Sarah nodded. "I tried to help some customers who were being treated unfairly." A small smile appeared on Emma's face. "Good, someone needed to tell him he's been cheating people." "Emma," Jake said with a warning tone. "It's true, Pa, and you know it," Emma sighed. Then she looked back at Sarah. "Are you really thinking about coming to work for us?" "I'm considering it," Sarah said honestly. Emma tilted her head, thinking. "Can you cook?" "Because Pa's cooking is terrible, and I'm not much better." Despite everything that had happened, Sarah found herself smiling. "Yes, I can cook." "Can you help with the books?" "Pa gets all confused with the numbers." "I'm good with numbers," Sarah replied. "And you're not afraid of hard work?" "No, I'm not afraid of hard work." Emma looked at her father. "I like her, Pa. She seems strong enough to handle ranch life." Jake chuckled. "Well, there's Emma's approval. What do you say, Miss Matthews?" Sarah looked around the hotel lobby. Through the window she could see Thomas's store. She thought about the life he had offered her, pretty dresses, tea parties, staying quiet while other people suffered. And she looked at Jake and Emma Harrison. Their clothes were simple, their hands were rough from work, but their eyes were honest and kind. "I have one question," Sarah said. "If I disagree with how you do something, if I have ideas for making things better, will you listen?" Jake and Emma exchanged a look. "Miss Matthews," Jake said, "if you have ideas that can help save our ranch, I'll not only listen, I'll be grateful. And if I speak my mind, if I can't pretend to be someone I'm not, we wouldn't want you to," Emma said firmly. Ma always spoke her mind. Pi listened to her about everything. That's how a partnership should work. Partnership. The word that Thomas had never understood. Sarah felt something warm growing in her chest. Hope. Maybe, or just relief. Outside she could hear the evening stagecoach arriving. The driver was calling out, getting ready to load passengers for the journey east. Sarah looked at her trunk, then at Jake and Emma. "Mr. Harrison, I accept your offer." Jake's weathered face broke into the first real smile she had seen since arriving in Cedar Ridge. "Welcome to the Harrison Ranch, Miss Matthews," Emma grinned. "This is going to be interesting." Mrs. Patterson clapped her hands together. "Oh, this is wonderful. Jake, you've made a smart choice. And Sarah, dear, you're going to love ranch life." As the stagecoach pulled away without her, Sarah felt a strange sense of peace. She wasn't going to be Thomas Whitmore's decorative wife, sitting quietly in a fancy parlor. Instead, she was going to be herself, working, helping, making a difference. Jake picked up her trunk as if it weighed nothing. "The wagon's outside. Emma can ride with us and tell you about the ranch on the way." As they walked toward the door, Sarah took one last look around the hotel lobby. When she had sat down here a few hours ago, she had felt like her life was over. Now, she felt like it was just beginning. Emma chatted excitedly as they loaded Sarah's trunk into the wagon. "Wait until you see the ranch, Miss Matthews. It's not fancy like Mr. Whitmore's house, but it's got character. And the sunrise over the hills is the most beautiful thing you ever saw." Jake helped Sarah up onto the wagon seat. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for giving me a chance when I needed one." "Thank you for taking it," Jake replied. "Takes courage to start over in a new place." As they drove out of town, Sarah looked back at Cedar Ridge one more time. She could see lights coming on in windows as families gathered for their evening meals. Somewhere back there, Thomas was probably in his perfect house, eating alone. Sarah turned to face forward, toward whatever was waiting for her at the Harrison Ranch. The evening air was cool and sweet, and for the first time in days, she felt like she could breathe freely. She had come to Texas looking for a husband. Instead, she had found something better, a place where she could be herself and make a real difference. Sometimes, Sarah thought, life had better plans than the ones you made for yourself. The Harrison Ranch house appeared in the lamplight as their wagon rolled up the dusty path. Sarah saw a simple two-story wooden building with a wide front porch. It wasn't fancy like Thomas's new house, but it looked solid and welcoming. Wildflowers grew along the porch steps, and she could hear cattle lowing softly in the distance. "Here we are," Jake said, helping Sarah down from the wagon. "It's not much to look at, but it's home." Sarah looked around in the dim light. She could see a barn, a chicken coop, and several other small buildings. Everything looked well-maintained but worn by years of use and weather. "I think it's lovely," she said, and meant it. Emma jumped down from the wagon with easy grace. "Come on, Miss Matthews. Let me show you to your room. Then we can have some supper." The inside of the house was clean and comfortable. The furniture was simple but well-made. Sarah could see a woman's touch in the small details, embroidered cushions, pretty curtains, flowers in a vase on the kitchen table. "Mom made most of these things," Emma said, noticing Sarah's gaze. "I try to keep them nice, but I'm not as good at the fancy work as she was." Emma led Sarah upstairs to a small bedroom. It had a single bed, a dresser, and a chair by the window. The quilt on the bed was beautifully sewn in a pattern of blue and white stars. "This was Ma's sewing room," Emma explained. "But we fixed it up for you. Is it all right?" Sarah set her bag down and looked around. The room was simple but comfortable. More importantly, it felt peaceful. It's perfect, she said. That first evening, Sarah learned more about the Harrison family. Over a simple supper of beans, cornbread, and coffee, Jake and Emma told her about their struggles with the ranch. We've got good land and good cattle, Jake explained. But the last 2 years have been hard. The drought killed a lot of our grass. We've had to buy feed, and that costs money we don't have. Emma nodded. And some of our cattle got sick last spring. We lost about 30 head. Sarah listened carefully. She could hear the worry in their voices, but also their determination to keep trying. What about your business with other ranchers? She asked. Do you sell cattle together, or does everyone handle their own sales? Jake looked surprised by the question. Mostly everyone handles their own. Why? Back home, the farmers would sometimes work together to get better prices, Sarah said. If you sold cattle as a group, you might have more power to negotiate with buyers. Jake and Emma exchanged looks. That's not a bad idea, Jake said slowly. But getting ranchers to work together, that's not easy. Over the next few days, Sarah settled into her new life. She discovered that Jake had been right. She didn't need to know about cattle to be useful. The ranch's biggest problems were with money and organization, things she understood well. She spent her first week going through the ranch's books with Jake, what she found worried her. The ranch was deeper in debt than she had expected. They owed money to the bank, to feed suppliers, and to several other creditors. Jake, she said one evening as they sat at the kitchen table with papers spread everywhere, if we don't find a way to bring in more money soon, you could lose the ranch. Jake's face was grim. I know. I've been trying not to think about it, but I know. Emma looked up from where she was mending a shirt. What can we do? Sarah had been thinking about this problem for days. We need to make the ranch more profitable. That means cutting costs and finding new ways to make money. She showed them a list she had made. First, we stopped buying so much from Thomas's store. His prices are too high. We can get supplies from the next town for much less. Jake nodded. That makes sense. Second, we need to talk to the other ranchers about selling cattle together. If we can organize a group, we can get better prices. And third? Emma asked. Sarah smiled. Third, we start a vegetable garden. A big one. We can sell fresh vegetables in town and to other ranchers. Most people around here don't have time to grow their own food. Emma's eyes lit up. Ma always wanted to expand her garden, but there was never time. Over the following weeks, Sarah threw herself into her new life with enthusiasm. She woke before dawn to help with the morning chores. She cooked meals, cleaned the house, and worked on the ranch's books. In the afternoons, she and Emma worked together to clear and plant a large vegetable garden. The work was hard, but Sarah had never been happier. She felt useful and needed. Every day brought new challenges and new opportunities to help. Emma, who had initially been suspicious of any woman trying to take her mother's place, gradually warmed to Sarah. She appreciated that Sarah never tried to mother her but treated her as an equal partner in running the household. You're different from what I expected, Emma said one day as they worked in the garden together. What did you expect? Sarah asked, pausing in her weeding. I thought you'd be soft and helpless, like the ladies in town who can't do anything but pour tea and gossip. Sarah laughed. I've never been very good at pouring tea. Good, Emma said firmly. We need someone who can work, not someone who needs to be taken care of. Sarah also began to understand Jake better. He was a quiet man who had been carrying the weight of the ranch's problems alone since his wife died. Having someone to share the burden with made a visible difference in him. You know, he said one evening as they reviewed the improved ranch finances, Martha always said I needed a partner in running this place, not just a wife to cook and clean. She sounds like she was a wise woman, Sarah replied. She was. I think, she would have liked you. Sarah felt honored by the comparison. She had seen Martha's photograph on the mantel, a strong-faced woman with kind eyes and a determined chin. Emma looked just like her. The vegetable garden was a huge success. Sarah's experience helping on her family's farm back in Ohio proved invaluable. She knew which crops would grow well in the Texas climate and how to manage water during the dry season. By late summer, they were selling fresh vegetables to families in town and to other ranches. The extra income wasn't huge, but it was steady and reliable. More importantly, it gave them hope that they could find other ways to improve their situation. Sarah also made progress with organizing the ranchers. It took time and patience, but she gradually convinced several of them to try selling their cattle together. Jake's reputation for honesty helped convince the others to trust the plan. "You've got a gift for bringing people together," Jake told her after a successful meeting with 5 other ranch owners. "They listen to you because they can see you care about what's fair for everyone." Meanwhile, the people of Cedar Ridge watched Sarah's transformation with interest. Some admired her hard work and practical success. Others whispered about the propriety of a single woman living on a ranch with a widowed man. Thomas Whitmore was among those who watched. He had married a new mail-order bride named Mary, a quiet, proper lady who did exactly what was expected of her, but Thomas found himself looking toward the Harrison Ranch more often than he cared to admit. He saw Sarah in town sometimes, usually with Emma or Jake. She looked different from the woman who had arrived on the stagecoach months ago. Her hands were more calloused, her skin was browned by the sun, and her dresses were simpler and more practical. But there was something about her that he hadn't noticed before, a confidence and contentment that made her more beautiful than any fancy dress could. One day, Thomas encountered Sarah at the bank. She was there on business for the ranch, negotiating with the banker about their loans. "Hello, Sarah," he said stiffly. "Hello, Thomas," she replied politely. "How are you?" "I'm well, and you?" "I hear you're working for the Harrisons now." There was disapproval in his voice, but Sarah didn't react to it. "Yes, I am. It's good work." Thomas looked at her for a long moment. "I hope you're not making a mistake. Ranch life is hard on a woman." Sarah smiled slightly. "Some women are made for hard work, Thomas. Some of us are stronger than we look." After Thomas walked away, Sarah felt a moment of sadness for him. He had everything he thought he wanted: a successful business, a fine house, a proper wife. But she could see the loneliness in his eyes. He had chosen safety over love, appearance over substance, that evening. As Sarah sat on the ranch house porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors, she reflected on how much her life had changed. 6 months ago, she had been desperately hoping for a husband and a conventional marriage. Now she had something better, work that mattered, people who valued her for who she was, and a sense of belonging she had never felt before. Emma came out to sit beside her. "What are you thinking about?" the girl asked. "Just how strange life can be," Sarah replied. "Sometimes what seems like the worst thing that could happen turns out to be the best thing instead." Emma nodded wisely. "Ma used to say that God has better plans for us than we have for ourselves." Jake appeared in the doorway. "Ladies, supper's ready." "And Sarah, we got word today that the cattle sale went through. The group approach worked. We got 20% more than we would have gotten selling alone." Sarah felt a warm glow of satisfaction. "That's wonderful news." As they went inside for their evening meal, Sarah realized that she had found what she had been looking for all along. Not a husband to take care of her, but a family to work alongside. Not a life of leisure, but a life of purpose. She was exactly where she belonged. 18 months had passed since Sarah first arrived at the Harrison Ranch. The struggling operation had transformed into one of the most successful ranches in the county. The vegetable garden now supplied half the town with fresh produce. The group cattle sales had become a regular practice among local ranchers, bringing better prices for everyone. Sarah stood in the kitchen one morning, kneading bread dough and watching through the window as Jake and Emma worked with the horses in the corral. The sight filled her with quiet contentment. This had become her family, her home, her life. Emma, now 18, had grown into a confident young woman under Sarah's guidance. She could manage the ranch books as well as anyone, ride as well as her father, and had recently started a small business making leather goods for the townspeople. Jake had changed too. The worry lines around his eyes had softened. He smiled more often and carried himself with the confidence of a man whose burdens were shared rather than borne alone, and Sarah herself felt more at peace than she ever had in her life. The work was hard, but it was meaningful. Every day brought new challenges, but also new satisfactions. She had found her place in the world. That afternoon, a spring storm rolled across the plains. The sky turned dark and the wind picked up, bending the grass and rattling the windows of the ranch house. Sarah was in the barn helping to secure the equipment. When she heard a loud crack followed by a crash, she ran outside to see that a large tree branch had fallen across the roof of the chicken coop, crushing part of it. Several chickens were running around in panic, and rain was starting to pour through the broken roof. "We need to fix this before we lose all the chickens," Jake shouted over the wind. Without hesitation, Sarah grabbed tools and lumber from the barn. Together, she and Jake worked in the driving rain to repair the damage. They moved the frightened chickens to safety, cleared away the broken branch, and patched the hole in the roof with whatever materials they could find. By the time they finished, they were both soaked to the skin and covered in mud. Sarah's hair had come completely loose from its pins and hung in wet tangles around her face. Her dress was torn and dirty. As they made their way back to the house, Jake stopped suddenly and turned to look at her. Rain was still falling, but his gray eyes were warm and intense. "What is it?" Sarah asked, wiping rain from her face. Jake stepped closer to her. "Look at you," he said softly. "Your dress is ruined, your hair is a mess, you're covered in mud. And you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. Over the months, she had grown to care deeply for Jake, but they had both been careful to maintain the proper boundaries of their working relationship. "Jake," she began, but he continued talking. "I've been trying to find the right time to say this," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "But watching you just now, working beside me to save those chickens, not caring about getting dirty or ruined, I realized there is no right time, there's just now." The rain was slowing, but they stood there in the muddy yard, looking at each other. "Sarah, I can't imagine facing tomorrow's battles without you beside me," Jake said. "These months with you have been the happiest I've had since Martha died. You've brought life back to this ranch and to my heart." He reached out and gently touched her face. "Will you marry me, Sarah? Not because I need a wife, but because I love the fighter you are. Because I love your strength and your kindness and your stubborn refusal to let people be treated unfairly." Sarah felt tears mixing with the raindrops on her cheeks. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I'm not the kind of wife most men want. I speak my mind. I work with my hands. I'll never be content just sitting in a parlor." Jake smiled, the first full, joyful smile she had ever seen from him. "Sarah, that's exactly why I love you. I don't want a decoration for my parlor. I want a partner for life's adventures. I want someone who will stand beside me when things get tough and celebrate with me when things go well." Sarah looked into his honest gray eyes and saw everything she had ever hoped to find in a marriage. Not someone who wanted to change her, but someone who valued her exactly as she was. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Jake swept her up in his arms and spun her around in the muddy yard, both of them laughing with pure joy. Emma appeared on the porch, drawn by the sound of their laughter. "It's about time," she called out. "I was beginning to think you two would never figure it out." The news of their engagement spread quickly through Cedar Ridge. Most people were happy for the couple. They had watched the Harrison Ranch prosper under Sarah's influence and had seen how well she fit into the family. The wedding was planned for the following month. It would be a simple ceremony at the ranch, with a celebration afterward for all their friends and neighbors. As the wedding day approached, Sarah found herself thinking about the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had come to Texas looking for security and respectability. Instead, she had found love and purpose. Emma helped her sew a new dress for the wedding, not fancy like the one she might have worn as Thomas's bride, but beautiful in its simplicity. It was made of cream-colored cotton with small blue flowers embroidered around the neckline. "You look perfect," Emma said as Sarah tried on the finished dress. "Not fancy perfect, but real perfect." The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright. Sarah woke early and stood at her bedroom window, looking out over the ranch that had become her home. The vegetable garden was flourishing, the cattle were healthy and fat, and the whole operation hummed with productive activity. She thought briefly about Thomas Whitmore and wondered if he ever regretted his decision to send her away. She had heard that his marriage to Mary was polite but cold, that his perfect house was quiet and lonely, but she felt no bitterness toward him. Thomas had wanted one kind of life, and she had wanted another. They would both have been miserable. If they had married, the wedding ceremony took place on the front porch of the ranch house, with wildflowers from the meadow decorating the railings. Jake wore his best suit, and his face glowed with happiness as he watched Sarah walk toward him. The local minister performed the ceremony, but the words that mattered most were the ones Jake and Sarah spoke to each other. "I promise to stand by you in all of life's battles," Sarah said, looking into Jake's eyes. "To share your burdens and your joys, to work beside you as your equal partner, and to love you exactly as you are." Jake's voice was steady and sure as he made his vows. "I promise to value your strength and support your dreams, to listen to your wisdom and respect your opinions, to love the fighter in you and never ask you to be anyone but yourself." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the crowd of friends and neighbors erupted in cheers and applause. The celebration that followed lasted well into the evening, with dancing and music and plenty of food. As the sun set over the ranch, Jake and Sarah stood together on their porch, watching their guests enjoy themselves. Emma was dancing with one of the young men from town, her face bright with laughter. "No regrets?" Jake asked, putting his arm around Sarah's waist. Sarah leaned against his shoulder and looked out over the land that was now truly her home. "Only that it took me so long to find you." "You found me exactly when you were supposed to," Jake said. "Any earlier, and we both might have been too foolish to recognize what we had." In the distance, they could see the lights of Cedar Ridge twinkling in the darkness. Somewhere in that town, Thomas sat in his perfect parlor with his perfect wife, living his perfect, empty life. Sarah felt a moment of genuine pity for him. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Thomas had been different?" Jake asked, as if reading her thoughts. Sarah considered the question. "I think everything happened exactly as it should have. Thomas taught me what I didn't want in a marriage. You showed me what I did want." She turned to face her husband. "Thomas wanted a lady who would never disagree with him, never challenge him, never be anything more than a beautiful ornament for his house. You wanted a partner who would work beside you and fight life's battles with you," Jake smiled. "And I got the best partner a man could ask for." As the evening wound down and their guests began to leave, Jake and Sarah walked through their ranch together. They checked on the animals, made sure everything was secure for the night, and planned their work for the next day. It was the kind of simple, practical activity that would have horrified Thomas Whitmore. But for Sarah, it was perfect. This was what marriage should be: two people working together toward common goals, supporting each other's strengths, and facing whatever challenges came their way as a team. Later that night, as they sat on their porch in the peaceful darkness, Sarah reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. She had traveled to Texas as a rejected mail-order bride with nothing but a trunk of clothes and a broken heart. Now she was a successful ranch owner's wife with a thriving business, a loving family, and a community that respected and valued her. "What are you thinking about?" Jake asked. "I'm thinking about how sometimes the best things in life come disguised as disasters," Sarah said. "If Thomas hadn't rejected me, I never would have found you. I never would have discovered what I was really capable of." Jake took her hand in his work-roughened one.